The difference between cards and stock is that nobody loves a stock. Some people who buy these cards to get them to sell is like getting them to take off an arm. This is going to be a fun video. This is going to be a good one. I'm super excited. This is one of my videos that I get to do that I'm super excited about because it's something that I am super passionate about and I don't have anybody to talk to about it. So I'm going to talk to you about it because I enjoy talking to you about it and I enjoy your comments. I enjoy it when you hit the thumbs up button, and I enjoy it when you hit the thumbs down button, and I enjoy hearing your comments in the comment section about if I was right or if I was wrong. So we are super close to 1,000 subscribers. Super excited about that too. Stay tuned this week. Big news coming out. It's going to be great. But this is one of my favorite types of videos to do because I read an article. This is from CNN Business, okay? Talking about flesh and blood cards, but they just don't know they're talking about flesh and blood cards. This is from CNN Business, and I read this article and I was like, man, I gotta talk about it because there's some good stuff in it. So I want to know your thoughts, okay? And don't get me wrong, like your thoughts matter to me. Sometimes I'm like, no, I don't agree with that. But then like later in the day, I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah. Like, so if you don't think your thoughts are important, they are. So leave them in the comment below, hit the thumbs up, hit the thumbs down, do whatever you want to do. Obviously that helps the channel too. But here we go. This is an article from CNN Business. There's never been a time like this. Wall Street is piling in to trading cards as prices soar, okay? And in this article, they talk about Michael Jordan rookie basketball cards, and they talk a little bit about Gary Vaynerchuk, who's really big into the sports card stuff, and they mention some of the YouTubers who have been opening the Pokemon cards on TikTok and on YouTube as well. But I think everything that they say in this, and they even talk about bubbles, right? They talk about bubbles. They have a whole section, is it a bubble? And we'll talk about that. I think everything in this article is crazy. It's the same conversations that we are having in the flesh and blood community. And that's amazing because what it tells me is that the flesh and blood community is no different than the other trading card collectible game companies or the other trading card collectible communities, and that's a really good thing for flesh and blood. So let's talk about this article. It starts out by saying that in early February, a Michael Jordan rookie baseball card in pristine condition sold for a record $738,000 at an auction. The kicker, the exact same card, literally the same card, went for nearly $215,000 just weeks before. So in weeks, it went up $500,000. This is the same thing we saw happen with like the same percentage increases as like Crucible of War cards in 1 week, right? Like 1 week you could buy a card for $100, and the next week that full art 20 blade was $600, right? Like it's a big trend, and they even say part of a much bigger trend transforming card collecting from a fusty hobby to a major investment market. And that's what I want to talk about, that flesh and blood and that collectible games is a major investable market, and that a major investment market. And that's what this article is basically saying, is that it's not just stocks, right? Like that Wall Street executives, like people like Gary Vaynerchuk, who I don't know if I'm saying that last name right. I love him, dude. That guy is fantastic. If you haven't seen a Gary V video, dude, that guy knows his stuff. He has a yard sale. I actually wanted to do this I have another YouTube channel that I used to use, and I was going to do it where he goes to yard sales and he just flips stuff, and it's such a cool video. Anyway, the trading card renaissance has its root in the pandemic. So that's the other thing I wanted to talk about, because I think this was true for flesh and blood, that, it's crazy that all of us have gotten, or most of us, I'd say a large percentage of us, have gotten involved in flesh and blood in the middle of a global pandemic, and it's a trading card game that's meant to be played across the seat from each other, right? But here's what they said. I love this. Like, this was super interesting. The trading card renaissance has its roots in the pandemic. Stuck at home without live sports games, people began raiding their attics and their basements and digging up old cards. Like, it just makes sense. And like, I did the same thing. Like, that's where I went. Like, once I started seeing some of the Pokemon stuff, I was like, oh, I have all this time. And that's when I went and dug up all my Pokemon cards and realized how, like, the value of the stuff I had. And then, I just got super into it. And then it also talks about They also sat down to watch The Last Dance, which is a documentary series about Jordan, the legendary former NBA star, blah, 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 that aired. So this big, thing aired on ESPN, and that got people thinking about Jordan cards, right? And that launched the Jordan rookie card. And then here's the thing, don't go away just because it's not about flesh and blood. Like, you got to have a bigger idea in your brain. Like, don't just leave this video because it's not all about flesh and blood. Like, the whole market is a really healthy thing to be looking at. And so when people started seeing the value of the people who were investing in this Jordan card, to me that says, okay, if those people, those higher up people are worth, or are saying, hey, that Jordan's card's worth $700,000, to me that gives a lot more credibility to our, like, I don't know, Heart of Fayendale that's at 15,000 or whatever it's at, 20,000. Like, that gives a lot more credibility that the investable market is there for cards that have a limited run. And that's what we're going to get to. There's a really good quote here about the limited nature of collectibles, and we're going to get there. But and so then these guys like Mark Wahlberg, Gary Vaynerchuk, DJ Steve, I can't say that guy's name, Steve Aoki, I can't say it. Anyway, these guys all like started like creating companies that are completely founded on collectible cards, right? It's crazy. And then here's that quote. This is a market that's growing in demand, but doesn't have more supply. This is from Gary Vee. It's a recipe for opportunity. This is a market that's growing in demand. Does this not sound like flesh and blood? Like, okay, like this, just throw Pokemon out the window. Throw everything out the window, okay? Does this not sound like Gary Vee is talking about flesh and blood? This is a market that is growing in demand, but doesn't have more supply. Like, that is where we are with first edition from Arcane Rising, first in Alpha from WTR, and even going to be with Crucible of War. We are a market that's growing in demand, and that won't have more supply. Like, when we look back on Monarch pre-orders, we're going to see that this is a market that is growing in demand, but doesn't have more supply. And that's a recipe for opportunity. And that's what they're saying. Like stocks, right? Like, they just kind of, they add, I don't know how stocks work, honestly, but, there isn't a finite supply, right? Like, they can break it off. And I know like how that works. You get, double your money then or whatever. But the finite supply of a collectible is something that is very, very unique. And that's their point here. So here we go. Is it a bubble? This is what I was hoping you're waiting for. Is it a bubble? After Greg brokered the sale of a rare Mickey Mantle card to an entrepreneur in January for $5.2 million, labeled the biggest sale of any trading card in history, questions about a price bubble seemed valid. And this is where everyone's asking about Flesh and Blood too. Are we in a bubble, right? Like, are we in a bubble? But this guy, Josh Luber, he said this. He said, I think trading cards are one of the most undervalued asset classes of all time. And he added that while the card appreciated faster than he would have expected, he doesn't think that the value is out of line with where demand was headed. And then he started talking about the Michael Jordan card again. He said, everyone in the industry believes and thinks that it's a $1 million card. But all we thought was that it was going to take a year to get to instead of a month. And I think that's, again, where we are. Like, I don't think anybody is arguing of what the price of a Heart of Fayendale should be. Like, I think we all understand that the success of the game, as Flesh and Blood continues to succeed, a Heart of Fayendale is worth more than the $19,000 that it's at right now. I don't personally think that you could make a valid argument other than if the game collapses and Flesh and Blood dies. That's the only way that a Heart of Fayendale, if you believe in the card game of Flesh and Blood, $19,000 for a Heart of Fayendale cold foil is not the top, and you don't believe that. And so we all agree that it's worth more money. It's what's the trajectory? What's the future? How long is it going to take? And what this guy is making the point of is that we thought it was going to take a less amount of time, but instead it just happened. And I think that's a result of the pandemic. I think that's a result of people being at home, not able to connect with people as much, so we spend more money. And so I think what I'm taking away from this is when we look at it and say it's a bubble because of the speed, what we're using is this brain power of like, in regular everyday life, that is too fast. But here's the thing, guys. We are not in regular everyday life anymore. Like, life is different. Everything about my life is different than a year ago when this pandemic started. The decisions I make about where to go, who to hang out with, what I'm going to do in my free time is completely different. And I don't personally think it's ever going to go back to the way that it used to be. And in my mind, that has hit I don't want to call it a reset button, but maybe like a boost button, like a nitro, like, you know, like we're in the nitro, like, what's that movie, Fast and the Furious? And that's what's causing it to plunge or to exceed in value. So then they talk about this. I don't want this video to be too long. Then they talk about this. They talk about the industry has also seen a crash in prices before. And this is, you know, obviously most of you guys know the 80s and 90s trading card games, or really sports cards, they oversaturated the market. They overprinted a bunch of stuff. And that's why cards plunged in value from that era. And this guy kind of acknowledges that prices will inevitably fluctuate, but he believes that the supply will remain in check, particularly on the upper market value. And so here's the thing that I think. I really believe that in Flesh and Blood's case, in Legend Story Studios' case, in James White's case, that they understand what happened in the 80s and the 90s to the collectible market, and that they are aware of it, and that they are going to protect you, and that they're going to protect me from that kind of flaw where they overprint things. I do not think that we will ever see an overprinted set of Flesh and Blood, at least for the next 5 years. Like, I don't think that, I just don't think that that's in their DNA. Like, I don't know why. I don't have any like real, like, I guess there's no evidence for that. It's more of just a feeling, a belief in Legend Story Studios. But what is, I mean, right now we are all, the supply of Monarch definitely not going to be oversaturated. Like, definitely not going to be overprinted. And that gets us to Kingdoms. So Kingdoms will be the next idea of, but I don't see them butchering it, guys. Like, I don't see them being like, hey, we're going to crash the market. For what reason? Like, they don't need to do that because of Unlimited. Like, they simply don't need to do it. So why would they? Why would they mess with that idea and go back to this idea where they overfluctuate? So, and so then he goes this. This is the quote that I started with, and the quote that I love. The difference between cards and stock is nobody loves a stock. He said, some people who buy these cards, this does not sound like Flesh and Blood. Some people who buy these cards to get them to sell is like getting them to take off an arm. And this is why Enlightened Strike is selling, you know, for, I think I saw one sell for like $3,000 last week. I haven't done that data video yet, but this is why cards are selling at such exaggerated prices. You could have gotten one of those for $150 a while ago, but then all the people who were going to, I talked to a guy about twice a week. Okay, he's a patron. He's an active viewer of the channel. I talked to him about twice a week. Who owns a Rainbow Foil Enlightened Strike? He bought it. He got it in a Rudy kit. It was the first kit that he opened. The first box he had an Enlightened Strike foil, and it had a Cold Foil Legendary. I want to say that it was a Mask of Momentum. Okay, we talk about it all the time. He has had offers. $3,000. Hey, I'll trade you a Cheyenne and some cash. He's had offers for a long time. He texts me the offers all the time. The guy is just simply not going to sell it, guys. Like, he talks. He's like, oh, I don't know, maybe I should sell it this time. But like, I have full capacity that this guy is not going to sell because he loves the card. It has sentimental value to him. And then on top of the sentimental value, guys, like, he didn't spend anything on it. He spent $80 on the card. So he doesn't even have any reason to like recoup his money. And that's the story of so many of you. Not me. Not this guy. I guess I'm kind of that way with my crew cards. But that's the story with so many of you. Your investment into these $3,000 cards was like $0. That's a huge deal. Like, that is a... Now you don't have that like kick in the pants or like credit card debt that is holding you to the price of the card. And so I want to quote that one more time. the difference between cards and stock is that nobody loves a stock. Some people who buy these cards to get them to sell, it's like getting them to take off an arm. So I loved this article, and man, like, to me, what it says is the rest of the market is also, the rest of the collectible market is also having talks about, is it a bubble? Is also having talks about, has it grown too fast? Is also having talks of what's next? And so what that tells me is that Flesh and Blood is no different, and that's really, really healthy. So hey, remember to be kind to the people around you. Thanks for listening. Hey, hit the thumbs up button or the thumbs down button. I don't really care which one you hit. Actually, I do. Hit the thumbs up button. It does hurt my feelings when you thumbs down. It's okay, though. And leave a comment. Do you guys know the YouTube algorithm? If you do both of those things, it doubles the algorithm. Just a thought. Like, if you comment and hit the thumbs up button, it counts as 2 things, and then it boosts it 4. Like, it's crazy. So help the channel out. Hey, thanks for being here. I really appreciate you. Have a good day. Remember to be kind to the people around you, and read that article. I'll link it in the description. Have a good day.